Speed. Shot one, take one.
So, I guess it would be probably the main thing to take away from being in prison in Nicaragua is that nothing's ever really like it's gonna be in your mind. Like there's never a person who's all bad and who's all good. And I think a lot of us, we all go through our lives being, I don't know, we get to live that luxury of living that illusion of being able to group things into certain categories like good and bad and righteous. And, you know, like, it just makes battles easier to fight. But everything gets all convoluted when you're in prison because, like, good people have to do bad things and bad people have to do good things to survive. And it probably, I mean, you do have your share of bad people, but at the same time, the people who maybe you have to count on just for some circumstance or another, you might have to count on them to save your life or to provide you with something or a bit of information that could be the difference between you living or dying. And that's just how life is. So it makes you have to be very aware of what's going on. You can't afford to have any illusions about this person being good or this person being bad. You have to actually look at it and get your hands all wrapped around it and pay attention to what's going on in your life, even though your life's confined to this tiny little box full of other people in it. That's just what it is. And so you have to deal with it. And of course, you know, your family and everybody who's back in the world, you know, here, who's not in Nicaraguan prison, they can't really know what it's like. So there's an element of deception involved with everything too, because you can't just all of a sudden break somebody out of their world where they think, or I guess I don't put enough faith in people all the time to have them be trusted to just step into a world where they can't compartmentalize everything into something that's manageable to their mind. Like, that's a process that happens. It's not something that you can just jump into. You know, it's traumatizing. So when you do find yourself in a situation like that, there's like certain groups of people who will like panic, and there's other groups of people who will freeze up, and there's people who will get angry. And I kind of just shut up. When it happened to me, I just sat there for about 3 months and didn't say much and tried to learn Spanish. But yeah, survival is basically just like you shut up and you learn and you listen. And you have to be responsible for breaking down your own barriers that you've made. Well, it's okay, you can't blame somebody for putting up those barriers. Like, we're trained to do that in our culture because it's convenient. It makes us good at earning and producing and like raising children and living in a society that's really interwoven and connected. But I don't think that the two necessarily have to be separate. But you have to have that tension in your life. It doesn't need to be prison, but you have to have something in your life that drags you out of that spot where you think you got everything figured out, because no one does. And the more time you spend there, the more complacent you become, the more dull your life is, and the less you learn, and the shittier our world is. Everybody needs to be informed, and it's their own responsibility to do that. But I was lucky enough to be gifted it in the form of a prison sentence in a foreign country. Like, it's not like it wasn't seen as a gift at the time. But being who I am now compared to who I was before, and the secrets about life that I know, that, you know, I can feel it inside. It's not so much that I have, you know, just an inner education, as opposed to like how our culture promotes like mental education. It's like it taught me who I was and who I could be, and like also what I'm capable of, which is a lot of stuff that isn't really like stuff that I really like am proud of. You have to be. Fear is a part of just survival. I don't care, like people like assume in prison that fear is part of something that you don't, like, it's like something that you don't want to show ever, which you just can't manage that. You know, you just can't always be fearless, because if you do, you'll get stabbed. People will see that, and it makes you more of a target than the weaklings, because there's the old saying, you know, like, you have to show fear, because if you don't, then you're just inviting people who truly are fearless and who have nothing to lose and who've killed other people, and who, it lets you know to them that you're human and that you're not a threat, whereas they aren't. And like, to show them that you aren't one of them, you have to be a little bit afraid. And there is plenty of shit to be afraid of everywhere you go. You're gonna see people who are tough, people who know how to fight, and that you can just tell right away. And it doesn't matter how tough you think you are, like, everyone's gonna find out how tough you are sooner or later. Like, even if you do let them know, like, I'm afraid, there'll come a time when someone's gonna, like, step up. And that's like the difference between the people who survive and don't get picked on and used in prison and the people who do, is how you react when the gloves, I guess, are off. Like, when you try to be reasonable and human with somebody and give them respect up to a certain point, but then at some point you can't. And then you have to learn by that time, hopefully, to shut your fear off and then just go. And usually that only has to happen once. And then everybody knows. It's like you are branded when you come in. And it doesn't happen right away either. Some people want to get it done with, so they will just go pick a fight. But I didn't even have any physical confrontations until like 2 months before I got out, so a year in. And I didn't have any problems with anybody. Like, I had like gotten into little fights here and there, but I had kept the peace and been like a person that was a confidant for a few of the like more reasonable people who I was near. And I got to know like prison guards and officials and stuff. And then I guess I just found a part of myself that I think is more like animal. It's not scary like you'd think it'd be. Like, oh, I found this part of myself that's like real horrible and real, like, doesn't do any good for anybody except for me. And that's like not real easy to live with. But you have to do it. You know, it's like, yeah, and you have to go a little bit farther than you normally would. Well, just because you do. Because then you don't get in any more fights. And nobody really messes with you. You just kind of gotta take it in stride. Because there's gonna be times in everyone's life, I don't care what it is you do, that you gotta be somebody who you don't want to be. It just comes all at once. It's like being in a car wreck versus getting punched in the gut once a day for a year. You know, you take the car wreck if it's given to you, like it was to me, and you just try to sort it out afterwards. And it just takes a little longer because it's stickier. It's harder to get away from because it happened. You know, the things that did happen. And yeah, you gotta just live with it. If I had never gone there, I wouldn't, well, first of all, I wouldn't have survived. But second of all, I wouldn't have ever known the truth about life, the truth about the way things can happen for everyone. And now I know that circumstances come about through all kinds of different, you never know what's gonna happen. So have compassion for people. And you can't save the world, but you can at least take a good look at your own world and figure out how you can make it better, how you can make it worse, or what part you play in it, what part you want to be. Because if you don't know it and you just float through it, then you're never going to be able to seize the opportunities that come to you in moments where you have to be somebody who you never thought you'd be. I'm sitting in jail, and it's my birthday, and Christmas had just passed, and I was in jail, and I was hoping to get out. You know, there's all this talk from lawyers who were super crooked and corrupt, and I didn't know that at the time, of course. That's why I freely gave them my money and let them take advantage of me. But yeah, they promised a bunch, and I was all for sure I was going to be partying in the new year with all my friends and going surfing and having a good time. And then I go to court, which is like a dry goods storeroom in some like little back sheds just way out in the middle of nowhere in this town called Rivas. I'd never seen anything like it. Most of Nicaragua is beautiful. It's not like awesome. And so this is like the first of just a series of these horrible like roller coaster rides of hopes. And the thing was, it's compounded by my family's like involvement in it. They were right there along with me. They were suffering, albeit in a different way, but just like definitely suffering as much or more than me. Just through the anguish of, you know, having to watch their son or their brother go through something like that. And you know, I tried to keep like a good face about it, and like I was strong, and I think I did a pretty good convincing job, but I don't know, probably not, because it was hard. But so I go to court, and the judge just says like, oh, well, we need some more time to think about this, and I'm thinking he just wants to get a bribe, which is cool. I'm totally willing to pay, and I was figuring it was gonna be like $5K, and we get out of there. That's when the lawyers were talking. They were throwing numbers around like $3,000, $5,000. I was thinking that's pretty cheap. I wasn't really thinking at all. I was just like, any amount of money I just wanted out of jail so bad. And then we're in court, and he postpones it. The judge does. He's like, oh, you know, there's something I forgot to do, and blah, blah, blah. And so we reconvene after the new year because they take this like 3-week-long holiday. So I sit in jail for 3 more weeks. And which was really hard because we were expecting to get out before the new year, or I was, and you know, that was the first little hiccup, but there was still hope because, you know, the court date was coming. And the judge ends up sentencing me to 3 years in prison without my even going to court. He like stole our bribe money and then just like was like, well, 3 years, clunk. And it turns out that they couldn't let me go anyway from the beginning because somebody had gotten called out for taking bribes from coke runners. So the government clamped down on like this corruption for like the standard month and a half or whatever it took till the story blew over. So it's my birthday, and I'm thinking like, sweet, it's a visit day in jail. You get like a 3-minute visit with some one person who gets to come. They have to wait like 3 hours to go see you for 3 minutes. So I'm thinking like, it's good news, you know? Like my lawyer's gonna come talk to me, and like everything's gonna be good. I'm gonna be out of here. I'm gonna be in the water today on my birthday. And my parents come up, or it was actually my father and my sister. And they came to visit me, and I hadn't seen them. You know, this whole time I'd been in jail in Nicaragua for like 4 months, and it was a great surprise. I was like, oh, cool. That's awesome that they would come and see me. And it turns out that my mom had actually like had this breakdown And she had to go back to the United States. And so immediately the wheels start turning. It's like, what causes people to have breakdowns? It's like, well, unexpected news. And so I got that birthday present of finding out I was going to be incarcerated in Nicaragua for 3 years. And that was pretty tough. So all that business blows over about the corruption deal. But once you get a sentence in Nicaragua, to get out is a totally different thing. It's like a different, there's no like court register. There's nothing, it's like if you want to get an appellate court judge audience, you got to shell up $10K at least. And that's just for them to take a look at your case. It's not like, I mean, this is, they have you by the balls. So tough there. And then there's some people who sit in jail long past they've served their sentence. So they've been wrongfully convicted by a system that doesn't work in the first place. They do their time, and then you have to have a lawyer to get out. They have to file papers for your release. They don't just let you out. So there's people sitting in prison who've already done their 5 years or whatever, and they're on their 7th because they don't have enough money to hire a lawyer to get out. It was very, very difficult for me to get over in my mind and not to be angry about that. Just some people who served their time in conditions that are just unbelievable, and they won't let them out. And everybody knows it. The prison guards know it, the prisoners know it, the courts know it, the lawyers know it. Everybody does. But who gives a shit about poor people? It's like, that's kind of what it comes down to. Because, yeah, these are fairly good people. Like, yeah, he might have, like, robbed some store. And he got 10 years for it, and he paid for it. And, yeah, like, I was in possession of some weed. Yeah, like a little bit. It's like, yeah, I smoke weed. It's like, okay. And I should have known that the law said 3 years for that quantity of weed. However draconian and stupid and ridiculous that is my responsibility to know. And I'll take responsibility for that. And I didn't even have to spend my full 3 years in prison because I have money. But people who don't have money, they just get trampled. And it'd be stupid to think that it just happens in Nicaragua. It happens right here. You know, like in our own community, there's poor people, there's people who have a hard time eating. And still, like, I guess that's like what I'd like to carry it into more nowadays, is just trying to like take that anger that I feel for people that I'll never see again and like try to turn it into something good where I live. Because it's here too, just like it was there. Just there, it's all up in your face because you sleep next to it. Here, you can get inside your walls and your comfy and Xbox, Arby's, and, whatever you want. And there you can't. And again, that harkens back to the gift part of it. Is I would have never, ever, ever taken the time to do that. To even consider what really happens in my life, in my community, in my family. The stresses that it puts on a family, like something like incarceration, especially over long distance, or just like seeing somebody or making a phone call is a huge effort. And yeah, like I think when a family goes through some of those stresses, the fissures in the family definitely become apparent. And I think where people maybe would have clung to their illusions about who was what and why before, now in the face of this crisis, everybody just comes together and actual like healing and repair happens, which is in the midst of this huge, just massive pile of awful, there's these like good things that come out of it. These good, I would say worth it. Like however high the price was. I feel like life for everybody involved is so much richer, so much more aware of what's happening really in anyone's life, because never had I ever been afforded the time to consider any of these things. And I'd also never been in a position where I was wrong, so wrong about something. And being fed those in such a harsh manner and being able to withstand it, it just reinforces in me who I think I am and who I believe I am and what I can do. And I think the same goes for my family. I mean, they all went through their own personal transformations and are still going through them. We all go through them. But I think this was a showcase one where we all got to be participants and saviors and heroes, villains, and just really actors in our lives, which I think isn't afforded to a lot of people. A lot of people think they act consciously in their lives, but a lot of us are asleep at the wheel a lot. And you can't be asleep at the wheel in a situation like that. You're forced to wake up and look at what's going on and really decide what's important to you. And what you learn is that the more you feel compassion, the more alive you feel. So getting out, I guess, after learning Spanish and learning how to fight and learning all the swear words you could possibly imagine in Spanish and getting strip searched constantly and having no possessions, being hungry, pooping in a hole in the ground, and living with 85 other convicts in a tiny little room that had 25 beds. I finally got to go. They said okay, that I could leave. That it happened from the efforts of just a small group of people who are truly determined and motivated, to get me out. Just really the support of my family, I think, was the biggest part by far. They just kept getting things done in an American fashion, which is very rare in Nicaragua. They pushed people really hard, which was something they had to learn. That, in a place where everything's scarce, the squeaky wheel always gets the grease. And for a long time, we couldn't learn that. And it's nice to be back in a place where you don't have to worry about any of that. It was really strange. The first time I was in handcuffs and riding around in this back of this old beat-up police truck going to jail, I felt really embarrassed that I was in handcuffs, and I still do in that moment. When I think back to it, I think oh, what a dumbass I was. Because I was a dumbass in a lot of regards. I was stupid. I just, I was young and thought I was smart. I think it's something that everyone can relate to, because all it really is just, it's anything that's difficult. If something's difficult, it means you're headed in the right direction as far as getting to know yourself. If something's difficult and you just give up, you're never gonna know. That's not exciting. That's not learning anything new that's gonna help anybody out, including yourself. I got lower than I ever thought I would ever get. And I came back. And it just makes you grateful and strong and able to take on anything, anything that comes my way. And also teaches you that you don't need a bunch of money to live. Your priorities as a human should be about what's important to you in your heart, not what everyone tells you on TV is important. And I know that's cliche to say. You got people trying to keep it real all the time. But that's the truth. It's you're only going to get out of it what you put into it in any situation. And as long as you keep trying and you come at things with an open mind, you're going to be able to do whatever you want to do. Well, for me, it took doing something traumatic. It took doing something that took me to a bad place to figure out who I was. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs a trial by fire. That's not the way it is for everybody, but it had to be that way for me. The way my life was going at the time I was arrested. You know, I don't think I was going anywhere very, very good. I had it coming, and I needed to do it. You know, I needed to go through the whole experience of finding myself, of reforging who I was and like, you know, I was a pretty like strong-willed person before. I just didn't know why, you know, why I was really doing anything. It was pretty much just for like instant gratification. Like I just wanted to keep satisfied and not have to want for really anything. And that's like a really quick way to get yourself into a desperate situation, as far as like how you view yourself. And like I just didn't know that. I just didn't know if I think we live in a wonderful country that yeah, it's busted, but everywhere's busted. You know, there hasn't been a successful governing body anywhere in the U.S., anywhere in the world, in the history of man. Everybody always fights. You know, but at least we have a system that I think is like at least a little bit based in logic and not based on greed completely. But, you know, in a lot of places you don't get that. You get arrested instead. And, you know, coming back here, yeah, we got all that good stuff. We got, you know, regulatory institutions that make sure our food's pretty healthy, you know, make sure that, like, people just can't totally take advantage of you like they can in places like Nicaragua. You know, like, and I think we should take control of that opportunity that we have to live in a place that affords us so many liberties and so many, just, like, opportunities just to live a full life. Yeah, not everyone's gonna be rich, but everybody can be happy. So, yeah. Don't smoke weed in Nicaragua. That's the lesson. Yeah. Yeah.